I can't imagine there'd be many people who've been clamoring for Topshop. This week in e-commerce, episode 125. I am Mal Chia, back with you for another week with Alex Ross. Alex, how are you?
I'm going well, Mal. Happy episode 125. I know every time we do this, we're like, I can't believe it's getting to that many.
Yeah, we are 1/8 of 1,000. Don't
Oh,
tell me why. Don't ask me why I just thought of that, but we're 1/8 of 1,000. So yeah, look, it's been good. It's been quite a journey. It's been great having you on board the last 30, 40 episodes or so. But it's been great to be able to share, our takes and insights on what's going on in the retail world, of which there is a lot going.
yes, there is. It's been a strong start to the year for sure.
It has been. It has been a strong start, but it's also very interesting because I continue to hear every week about more and more retailers who are likely on the brink at the moment, just unable to sustain unable to sustain growth or even sales without having to discount quite heavily. And I think the chickens have come home to roost for a lot of them, unfortunately.
Yeah. And we'll see more and more of that this year, I think.
Yeah, hopefully not too many. Hopefully not too many, but we'll see. We'll see. Last year was a shocker for retail closures around the world, according to the ABS data, and I expect that this year will be no better. All right, we're going to dive into our quickies for the week, and our first one is going to be about Peloton. So Peloton, a brand which we've spoken about a few times in the past, and they still continue to keep kicking on. And honestly, I forget they're there a lot of the time, but I saw that they are cutting 11% of their staff in a push to reduce their cost base by $100 million. So those staff have to be paid a lot of money for them to be able to cut $100 million from that. But it's going to be primarily hitting engineering and enterprise teams the hardest. So I think this is just a continued correction from their growth over the pandemic period where they've come out the other end, gyms are open, there's so many other alternatives. How do they continue to stand out?
Yeah, it's a big cut. And I wonder if the influence of AI when it comes to those developers has helped them make those decisions as well.
Yeah, potentially. And I think that's something which you see a lot of places with, I think, with engineers at Meta, I think being told that they have to use AI for a certain percentage of their work, plus Amazon as well, pushing a lot of people towards AI. But I think more broadly, it's like, how do they compete? Why would you pay that much for the bike, which you never own, and the subscription when you could just go to the gym or get a much cheaper alternative?
Yeah, for sure. And I think people are wary of the old subscription model and just how tied you are to that as well.
And there was actually one thing where I was at a hotel and they had a Peloton bike. And when I hopped on it, I realized that I needed to actually have a subscription. So automatically, I couldn't use this bike. And I was like, why would you limit this bike to only people on a subscription? Didn't make any sense.
Yeah, it seems like a weird setup for a hotel gym as well.
Exactly. And something else which doesn't make sense at the moment is the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission in the US has decided to investigate Nike of all brands for discrimination against white employees. Now, this is something which was really surprising to see. I know Nike have been a champion for diversity forever and a day, but to see the government come after them like this is quite alarming.
Yeah, it's an interesting story to come out, particularly off the US, I think.
Yeah, I think a lot of the changes which are happening there, obviously with the administration's policies, but to target private companies like this is it's obviously not great because you don't want to see that. Right? Private companies should be able to operate like this, but also in terms of what they're after, it's like there's so much research which shows that diversity is actually additive to the culture of an organization.
Yeah, and to be penalized, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, so we'll see how this one pans out. Hopefully, it doesn't go anywhere, and hopefully, it doesn't become ring alarm bells for other companies as well. And to try to be more conservative with their hires, I think at the end of the day, it should be merit based, but also at the same time, you should be actively seeking out diversity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, a story which you shared with me earlier today is a couple of retailers have added new brands, or at least are in the process of adding new brands. And for me, they couldn't be any different. The first one is that Topshop are returning to Myer, and then the second one is that Rhode are going to be launching at Mecca very soon. Now, Alex, what's your take on these two?
I think that there's been so much hype about Rhode. Everyone's really excited. I was excited to see that all of the products are now on the Mecca's website labeled as coming soon. So they're starting to drive kind of the suspense there and also showing what that product range will be. And then Topshop is a brand that I haven't thought about in a while. So for it to come to Myer, I suppose it's an affordable brand, but it's not an Australian one. So I would have rather seen some more kind of Australian brands fill that space.
I agree. Well, not necessarily even just Australian brands, but it just seems like a bit of a reach. Like it's not relevant anymore. Like Topshop have been around for a while. I'm sure their sales are going okay, but they're not going to move the needle. I think it's more of a nostalgia play for a brand which people might recognize from their youth. But when you compare that to Rode, where Rode is actually something which is progressive, innovative, there's huge demand for it. I can't imagine there'd be many people who've been clamoring for Topshop in Australia.
Yeah. Well, having said that, though, there is a lot of campaign around nostalgia at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see, yeah, if that actually converts to conversion and what that means for Maya.
Yeah, and look, I think Myer, we've talked about in the past, have been going quite well. They've seen significant growth in their online business, the marketplace. But at the same time, it's also, you need newness and freshness. So I don't know whether the nostalgia play will work. I see a lot of other brands like, Tommy, etc., who are starting to regain traction in the market. But to me, Topshop's not even at that same level. The space where they're playing is already so saturated with the likes of like a Uniqlo, for instance. Why would you buy Topshop?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. But I think we're all excited for Road to come up from Mecca. That's going to be a really, really good one.
Yeah, I will have to make a visit to the Mecca store and check out. I reckon there'll be massive lines for it when it launches.
Yeah, well, I think we hope so and they hope so too.
Yeah. All right. Our first deep dive for the day is about a luxury retail brand, Cosette, which have closed after 11 years in Australia. So this isn't a worldwide closure. It's just of the Australian warehouse. Now, the statement was that the market changed and we were sometimes a story. And that came from the owner of the brand. But what was interesting about this is that over the last 3 years, they have had 373 media reported complaints against them, leading to about $779,000 in disputed purchases. So a lot of legal action as well, which have continued to, I guess, drive around erode the positioning of this brand.
Yeah, it was one of those things that when I was reading the company statement and then their sentence of when we were sometimes the story, then it made me go and look for the story. I don't know if I had previously associated all of that, those legal complaints and things with Cosette, but apparently people have, and they're saying that's part of the reason why they're having to close.
Yeah, and I hadn't actually even heard of Cosette before. Had you?
I'm familiar with their brand. I wasn't as aware that they were that kind of secondhand seller of luxury goods. To be honest, I thought they were their own brand in themselves. So no, not familiar with them very well.
And I think in this space as well, there's now so much competition, in this as well. And I wonder whether the complaints about them have been to the fact that you position yourself on selling authentic products, so products which have been verified. You know where they've come from. You can guarantee who that it's an original and not a fake. And when you start to lose that trust, particularly in this space, it's really hard to earn that back. And also, especially when there's so many other online retailers as well, who you can buy similar products from. I think the choices and the choice is all out there. So that trust becomes more important than ever.
Yeah, 100%. And trust is already like obviously so important for so many brands, but specifically for a secondhand retailer like this. Yeah, if there's any whispering of that, then like you said, they'll go to competitors.
Yeah. And it's interesting as well that this is actually a growing market with more retailers and more brands actually trying to own their secondary market as well. So there's brands like Black Milk, who we've talked about before, but other luxury brands as well, who are starting to build their own secondhand marketplaces where purchasers of their product can actually have their product verified by the brand and then sell it in an online environment, which the brand also controls as well. So you kind of have, it's a win-win. You can sell on an environment which people naturally trust because it's brand owned, but the brand can also take a clip of that as well and also identify customers who it previously wasn't able to.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's that community piece as well as them protecting the margins and not getting a clip of the ticket to these other secondhand marketplaces.
Yeah, but it just reinforces how trust again is just so important right now, that even just like if you erode just like a little bit of trust, your whole business can go belly up. And I think this is the case which we've seen in Cosette, but also so many other brands as well, who they lose a bit of trust because they do something which customers don't like, and it's hard to earn that trust back. It's the old thing about brand, that brand takes years to build, but it takes 1 second or one moment to lose it.
We'll have to, with them just closing down the Australian operations, see. I don't know where else they operate, to be honest. But if they can start to call that back, and then maybe we'll see a re-entrance later down the line.
All right, our second deep dive is into JB Hi-Fi, a brand which we love. I was there the other day. I bought a couple of records from there. One of the few places where you can still walk in and brings in records on a vinyl on a regular basis, and a brand which is doing incredibly well. Probably one of the darlings of Australian retail. They have entered the retail media space and omnichannel by partnering with Retail Media Works to launch omnichannel retail media network across all their 200 stores, including the online store as well.
Now, can you tell me, Mal, what that means?
It means that in store and also online, brands who sell on in JB Hi-Fi will be able to buy advertising space across all their touch points. So this is a huge one. And obviously, Amazon have been owning this space for a while. It's the fastest growing revenue stream for Amazon at the moment, but also other brands as well have been exploring this. Adore Beauty do it, Oz Hair and Beauty doing it, Chemist Warehouse have retail media, and it's fast becoming, particularly when you are a multi-brand retailer, it's fast becoming a great way for you to be able to improve your margins. Because obviously one of the places, the areas which gets hit the most, and when you do sell other brands, your margins are much thinner than when you sell your own brand. Typically, if you're selling your own product, you have a 50+% gross margin. When you sell someone else's product, your gross margins generally about 30 to 40%. So if you can then offer advertising to these other brands on your website or your stores, that's another revenue stream for you as well. And given JB Hi-Fi's footprint as well, I think this is a pretty good one, because it's not just the products and the brands they sell there, but you also got to think about who goes into their stores as well. Typically, you've got people like myself who are more, and yourself, a little bit more tech savvy, into pop culture, things like that, will go in there. It's a great place. People just go there just to explore what's going on. And when you can think all the spaces they have to put an ad in front of you, it's a smart move for them, I think.
And I think it's definitely a natural progression. Like you said, really strong footprint, clearly defined audience, and also the expansion of their marketplace online as well. So, it's great from JB Hi-Fi. We love to see them win.
Yeah. But also, I guess, it's also another opportunity for brands to cut through the noise too. I know that with a few of the brands who I work with who have retail media, they do incredible business with that. But you also see that flow through to the results as well, with the brands who do then advertise on their channels, on the website, leveraging their paid social, leveraging their influencers. There's actually a measurable return for that. So I think this is a super smart play for JB Hi-Fi. But it just goes to show that, again, that things start to end up consolidating around fewer and fewer retailers. Like once all the advertising dollars pour into a JB Hi-Fi, where are the brands going to focus their time and attention? They're going to focus on those retailers, not the independent retailers. So I wonder whether, like Amazon has been doing for a while, things like this just continue to further accelerate the death of independent retail.
Yeah, I think that's at least, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but JB Hi-Fi is an Australian owned business. So at least we're keeping the money.
Yeah, that is right. Look, just as long as it doesn't become rent-seeking behavior like it does for Amazon, where Amazon at the moment, they know that you have no choice but to advertise or list your product on Amazon. So if they can then make it that unless you pay advertising, you're not going to get your product seen, it becomes like we've talked about before, a wealth extraction machine. And, Amazon are very, very good at that.
Yeah, I think the online, I can see that manifesting more. But when it comes to their store experience and having all of that product outlaid and view merchandising and all of that, yes, somebody might get a primer position depending on their advertising, but they've always got that range, and part of that browsing is what draws people into those stores in the first place.
Yep, absolutely. All right, and our final deep dive for the day is the big one for the week, where Bunnings, who we've also talked about many times before, a tribunal has ruled that Bunnings are now allowed to use facial recognition in their stores. Alex, I have many thoughts, but before I launch into my tirade, what do you think?
Well, I just thought it was interesting that this decision's flip-flopped, or the original decision was overturned, or however the legal language of that one is. We know crime is a massive problem in retail, so giving brands, retailers some power to combat that is interesting. But I think that obviously people are worried about the privacy of all of this and that facial recognition software.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I come into the picture, because I don't disagree that crime shoplifting is a big problem right now in retail, especially when we talk about like violence against retail workers and other unsavory type of behavior. So in that side, yes, I agree it's something which we need to fix, but it does open up a can of worms where how far can this extend to? I guess part of it as well, and part of the ruling was around the fact that Bunnings is allowed to do it if they notify their customers. So expect there to be lots of signs around Bunnings notifying customers that there is going to be facial recognition and AI technology being used, to monitor them for safety reasons. So as long as they do that, that's fine to do. I think this will then open the door for other retailers. You think about the Myers, the David Jones, Kmart's of the world to start doing this as well. I've no doubt they have massive theft problems there. But then also, where does it end? And also, how else can this data be used as well? Like, we need to have controls around who's actually going to be accessing this data. What's it going to be used for in the future? Are these brands going to be able to sell this data because they can recognize this person's face? This person's face also goes to this other store and that other store. How do we ensure that doesn't happen? Like, it needs to happen in like a closed environment, and we can't allow that data to be shared out. Otherwise, it just becomes a surveillance system, which retail or corporations will start to leverage for profit, as we always do. So that's where I think about, do we actually have the regulations in place to stop where this could potentially go, or to at least safeguard the harms which could come if it gets out of control? But also, when you start thinking about other applications like domestic violence as well, when you can now monitor where someone is in different stores, like who has access to that data as well. Yeah, there's a real slippery slope around this, I feel.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, there needs to be safeguards there. My mind goes to Woolworths and Coles and supermarkets where they are combating theft with their software and I don't know, it was facial recognition, videoing people using the checkouts and being able to identify whether you've put a product down
Mm.
onto the scales and whatnot. So there are other brands that are managing to kind of do this without needing to have that kind of layer of privacy invaded to an extent.
Yeah, they are. You're absolutely right. But but perhaps those methods don't work for every retailer. Obviously, when you're in a grocery store, that's different, because you do actually need to go there and to check out. You've got to weigh things, so you can kind of sense that they're checking the weight of the bag which you put in one side versus what the weight is on the other side, and it alerts you when things don't match up. But here, when you're talking about a garment and someone stealing a garment, I remember I used to work at Sanity, and Sanity, we were selling these giant DJ mixers. Someone was able to actually break open a cabinet during Friday night shopping, break open a cabinet, steal that, and walk out with it. And we didn't realize till like the next day, when it's like, hang on, there used to be a mixer there. And I was like, oh my God. And that was like a $2,000 mixer. So these things do happen, but those same thing, but that would not have worked in the case of Sanity versus a Coles or a Woolies.
Yeah. And to your point, the price point of the products in Bunnings versus Woolworths are very different. And the resale value as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, I don't know where this is going to go. I just have concerns around making sure that the data is properly protected. We are auditing it to ensure that the processes are in place to stop illegal, unethical use of that data, but also that it can't be sold as well, that we're not identifying people and then putting an ID on one person so I can track when Alex goes from this store to another store to another store, track a whole journey, which, as marketers and corporations, we look at that and go, that'd be amazing to do. But then you worry about, okay, that's amazing, but how else could this be used? And where is enough?
Yeah. And what did I agree to when I walked into the store is
Yeah.
all of that.
Well, apparently, if there's enough signage around the place, it's okay now.
Yeah, okay. But I also, we've got to be in the store to see the signage, and then by that point, isn't it kind of too late as
Too
well?
late, yeah. But also, how many people read the signs when you go into the store?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to see. I think that there's a lot of emphasis on privacy, on data storage.
Mm.
So it'll be an interesting one to watch.
All right, that's all we got time for this week on This Week in E-commerce. In the meantime, you're in Sydney this week. I'm in Brisbane this week. A lot of travel going on over the next few weeks. So we will see you back next week. I'll be recording from New Zealand, actually.
Oh, that's exciting.
Going over to see a client, one of our mutual clients, actually, Akoya. So I'm looking forward to that.
Amazing. Tell Patrick I say hello.
In the meantime, everyone, keep innovating, keep growing, and keep selling. And we'll be back next week.
Talk soon.